Hi, this is Debbie Cox. I'm a professor and the librarian at Grace School of Theology, and in this session I'm going to talk to you about block quotation format. Block quotations are quotations that are 5 lines or more in your own paper, and what you want to do is put long quotations or block quotations, as they're called interchangeably, into a special format so that they stand out from your own writing in the paper that you are turning in. There are a number of reasons for this, and one of the main reasons is that it makes it very easy for the reader to keep up with what is your writing and what is writing that you are quoting from some other source. Now, if a quotation only runs 4 lines or less in your paper, then you're going to want to make that a short quotation format, and short quotation formats have quotation marks around them and they fit into a paragraph without any special formatting other than the quotation marks. However, in block quote format, it looks a little different, and I have an example for you. When we look at block quotation format, the rule applies that a quotation should fit smoothly into the flow of our paper. If a person writes a paper where all they do is insert one quote and then another quote and then another quote, one after another without any insertion of ideas or their own writing, that's not really considered a research paper by most teachers. That's considered a paper full of notes that's ready to become a research paper, but it isn't because it hasn't been unified by the student's own writing. I like to think about quotations as the blocks or the bricks in a wall that you are building. So when you think about putting block quotations into your paper, and you will want to put some long quotes into your paper, what you want to do is think about the way you have to cement them together. So think for a minute about a brick wall. First, you lay a foundation, and then you have probably a whole stack of bricks over on the side. That stack of bricks, those are your quotations, your paraphrases, your research material that you've gotten from other sources. Now, here are 2 ways to build that brick wall. One, just stack the bricks on top of each other and hope that a strong wind doesn't come. Because if a strong wind comes, it could blow that entire brick wall over. And that is how it is with a research paper that is just one quote stacked, or one block of quotes stacked on top of another. However, if you cement that brick wall together, then it will stand against any number of different winds and hurricanes and tornadoes. There's all kinds of things that a brick wall that's well made can stand up against. So what I'm suggesting is that the cement that holds your research paper together is your own writing, your own words, your own ideas. So don't just put one block quote on top of another. Instead, make the block quotes flow into your paper the same way that cement would hold together the blocks. Your words will hold together the blocks of your research. Now let's look at this example. The writer begins with a sentence that is his own writing. In fact, 2 sentences that are his own writing, and then he moves into his quote. This quotation, by the way, is borrowed from the Purdue OWL website. I use that frequently when I'm teaching because it is such a good website for you, and that website address can be found in your classes. The inability of American students to write well is often discussed among educators and parents. The reasons for this problem in our society are varied, but the problem is not new. Now, all of that is the writer and his own words preparing the reader for the facts that he's about to present from his research. Now then, one of the things that you want to do is introduce the quotation with enough information to make it interesting and to make it flow. So a lot of the time we use what are called verbs of saying. And here's the word argues. We could have said says, we could have said states, we could have said informs us, but argues is very good here because it is an argument that he's making. In American Origins of the Writing Across the Curriculum Movement, David Russell argues, writing has been an issue in American secondary and higher education since papers and examinations came into wide use in the 1870s, eventually driving out formal recitation and the oral examination. From its birth in the late 19th century, progressive education has wrestled with the conflict within industrial society between pressure to increase specialization of knowledge and of professional work, upholding disciplinary standards, and pressure to integrate more fully an ever-widening number of citizens into an intellectually meaningful activity within mass society. Intellectually meaningful activity includes the ability to write one's own ideas. And so this is talking about whether or not people are going to just know how to do one thing, their little thing, like say they're a welder and the only thing they know how to do is weld, or whether they're going to become integrated into society in a way that they can play a part and contribute to a mass society such as the one we have in America, for example. So this is what this is talking about, and writing well is a significant part of being an educated person. Now let's talk about format. Now that we know what the writer's talking about, this is just one example, but the format stands for any block quote you want to put in. This writer has chosen to put in both the title of the article and the author. However, if he had wanted to, the author of this paper could have just put in the author's name. That would have been equally good. It's not as good to just put in the title without the author if there is an author. Now, if there's not an author, then that would be a good way to do it too. You don't always have to include both the title and the author, but it's nice when you can. Let's look at the way this is indented and spaced. Notice that there's no indentation here at the beginning of this. That means to the reader, to the educated reader, that this was the middle of a paragraph somewhere. It did not start a new paragraph in David Russell's article, so it's not indented. If this had been the beginning of a paragraph, it would have been indented as it is right down here at the word from. The reason it's indented is that this was the beginning of a paragraph in David Russell's article. Notice that this is single-spaced, whereas the paper itself is double-spaced. Turabian format, your Turabian format, which is the format that Grace School of Theology uses, tells us to single-space long quotes. Therefore, that's exactly what we've done. This is double-spaced, and when we get to our long quote, it's single-spaced. Another thing that does for the reader is it lets the reader see that this is different. This is not, say this was my paper, this is not Debbie Cox talking in this part. This is David Russell talking. This is a quotation, exact, word for word. Now let's look at one other little thing in this. Right here at the end of this first section, we see 4 dots. Those 4 dots are an ellipsis, ... which means something has been left out, plus the period, which means that this ellipsis ran all the way to the end of a sentence. Most people do not know that there is a time to use 4 dots. If you're in the middle of a sentence, then you can put in just 3 dots if you didn't leave out the end of a sentence. But if you are going all the way to the end of the sentence or sentences, I say we might have left out 3 sentences here, then ... 4 dots, spaced as you notice, represents an ellipsis mark, I left something out, and the period. This went all the way to the end of the sentence. So even these little dots are communicating something to the educated reader. So when you look through this, you see that that's the only place where there are ellipsis marks. So that means to me that that's the only place in this passage where the author of the paper chose to leave something out. Here at the end of the long quote or the block quote, I use the words interchangeably, we see a little footnote number. The way this footnote number is inserted is to go to Insert and go to Footnote. Excuse me, I always go right past it. There's Footnote. Click on Footnote and it will put a footnote number in superscript, which is the tiny little number up high, into your paper exactly where you want it. Now, this is a good way to do it because it also puts in a place for you to type in your footnote. So you could start your footnote right here. Oops, not in caps, please. And I'm not going to put in the whole footnote. Oh, I'd have to put spaces, wouldn't I, if I wanted to do it right. Show you how. So if I would put in my entire correct footnote right there. This is how you do block quotes in Turabian format. This is the format that you will want to use at Grace School of Theology when you are writing research papers. I hope this has been a big help.